Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cisco Optics Podcast, where we talk about pluggable optics for networks. Multimode fiber has been the workhorse for fiber optic communication within a data center for years, as well as a choice for Ethernet backbones in office buildings. It has a rich history that goes all the way back to the first optical fiber standards when 100 megabits per second was a huge data rate. Anybody remember those days? This is episode 58, and we conclude our conversation with Hao Dong, Market Technology Development Manager for Corning's Optical Communications business. We continue with the reach of high-speed standards for multimode fiber and the impact on data center deployments, and then close with chromatic and modal dispersion. Hao Dong is a Market Technology Development Manager for Corning's Optical Communications business. Within this role, he focuses on technology and market trends to identify, evaluate, and develop leading optical network solutions that form the backbone of today's connected world. Hao has over 18 years of industry experience and has held various positions in engineering, development, and marketing within the fields of optical components, fiber lasers, and optical communications. Hao holds a Bachelor of Science in Physics from Wuhan University and a PhD in Physics from the University of Connecticut. And now join me as I talk with Hao Dong.
Application space with a lot of potentials.
Oh, okay. So basically replacing what's currently like top of rack switch to server connectivity, which is basically copper cables still today at like 100 gig and even 400 gig, right, with QSFP-DD.
That's right. So for that applications, basically it's the idea or the thought is to use the fiber, especially multimode, to replace the copper. But the difference is, for a lot of, I would say, incumbent data centers, we go with top-of-the-rack switch, right? So for many of the newly built AI machine learning applications, what we see is they're going to have a lot of GPU-based servers, and eventually they will stack, the switch in the middle of the row, right? So as you can imagine, the distance will be way longer. It's of course it's it's not as long as 100 meters or so, for example, right? But it could be 20 meter, 30 meter or so.
Yeah.
For copper, it might go run out of steam, but for fiber, that's a perfect application.
I mean, even our 100 gig copper cable portfolio, I think the longest reach is 5 meters. So middle row, end of row, this people would normally use an active optical cable for that application.
That's right. By the way, the other application is the vehicle application. I don't know if you heard about the vehicle application with a multimode. So I would consider that as an emerging fiber opportunity. For many of the fiber vendors, including us, right? So the standard-wise, there is a IEEE working group. IEEE AO2.3CZ. They're working on that and developing the standards for the vehicle connection based on fiber. So far, I think they made a decision to choose OM3 as the fiber medium. And of course, the distance is relatively short. I think
OM3 seems like overkill. I mean, what kind of data rates are we talking about?
If you think about the speed, they're talking about the multi-gigabit speed, multi-gigabit level.
OM3 at 100 gig, a 4x25 gig is 70 meters.
That's right.
How long is your car?
Well, they define. I think they define the application with less than 40 meter distance. As you can imagine, if it's for the personal vehicle, of course, 40 meters seem like too long. But if you consider the truck, I think more or less.
Or maybe a train. Maybe this will go on a train or something. Yeah,
that's right.
Or even a big airplane if you have to maybe loop around a couple times.
That's right. I'm sure they leave enough tolerance in there in terms of the reach. But the real challenge, it's not the optical performance. Like you said, OM3 might be overkill already, right? If you consider 40-meter transmission at several gigabit speed. But the real challenge is the cabling and connectivity, right? How do you develop a solution, really for harsh environment, right? How do you make sure your solution is mechanically reliable and robust, so that eventually it survive high temperature, lower temperature, or even vibration for a long period of time. So that's a real challenge we need to seriously consider.
Well, there must be some knowledge base, at least from all the outside plant connectivity, right?
Yeah.
I've seen like connectors that are like protected within like rubber gaskets and all that.
Yeah. Anyway, there were a lot of details being developed and being defined by this standards group. So certainly we are very interested in the standard development as well. So we keep an eye on it.
Okay, I'm really curious now because way back in the day, really long time ago when I was a student, I had a professor. He was actually very involved in IEEE. I think he still is. But he said, hey, when we finally get around to putting fiber in our car, I have the perfect acronym: fiber under the hood, FUTH, FUTH. And he wrote it. At the time, we didn't have laptops. We used, plastic sheets on the projector, and he wrote it, and it showed up on the screen. He said, if this ever takes off, that's my acronym. So maybe I'll reach out and see if he's involved with that, so he can claim his the name.
Yep.
All right. Anything else you want to bring up? Any other applications? Any other work that you've been doing that you're excited to talk about? Or
I think the final thing I wanna talk about is we mentioned the future-proof solution for multimode, right? We talk a lot about the 100G per LAN. But if you really look at what is what's going to be next, right? So what will be the future solution? For example, if the LAN speed goes beyond 100G per LAN, keeps going to 200G per LAN, what's going to be next, right? So I just want to highlight some of the work we do, and some of the the work stream we're thinking about at Corning as well.
Okay.
So in terms of transmission, especially the multimodal transmission, I think the transmission performance is really determined by so-called the link effective link bandwidth, right? So when it comes to the multimode, the question is what will determine the link bandwidth, effective link bandwidth. So from the fiber standpoint, you would certainly consider the model dispersion contribution, and also the chromatic dispersion contribution, right?
Okay.
So end of the day, if you lay out everything, I think there are three options that you could do. One is to somehow to reduce your chromatic dispersion by using a narrow linewidth laser, right? So that your chromatic dispersion will be reduced. But that's not easy. Obviously, you need to consider.
I mean, you're saying to reduce the signal bandwidth. Is that what you're saying? With a narrow linewidth laser?
You need to reduce your line width, right? By using the narrow linewidth pixel, basically, the aperture will be smaller, and eventually, if you look at the spectrum will be narrower as well. So
okay.
So that's one of the ways that you could reduce the chromatic dispersion, right? So
yeah.
The other option is considering where your operating wavelength is in terms of fiber operating wavelengths, so you could bring your operating wavelengths to the longer end. Say instead of using 850, you might consider 1060 nanometer. In that way, your operating wavelengths will be closer to lambda zero, namely the zero dispersion wavelengths, right? So that's another way you could,
right?
Yeah, exactly. That's another way you could reduce the chromatic dispersion contribution. But obviously, for that option, you need to make more changes to the ecosystem. Right. Not only you need to change the laser, but also you need to change the fiber design.
Okay.
So the last option will be the fiber. So as we said, other than the chromatic dispersion contribution, there is a model, the EMB contribution, right? Effective model bandwidth dispersion contribution. So certainly, you might need a higher EMB fiber for the future. So that's something we always keep it in the mind, and we're thinking and working on that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask, the first two options required a lot of work of the laser people. So I was thinking, very convenient.
Exactly.
Did you come up with those ideas?
Yes. So we probably, we would rather to take the heavy lifting and working on the fiber side, right? To create the higher EMB fiber. That, I don't know, that might be easier, relatively.
Well, one thing I think history has proven, that every time we come up against some kind of brick wall, and some people will say, it's impossible, we just can't go any further. I think we saw it at 10 gig or at 1 gig, lasers going to 10 gig, 10 gig going to 100 gig, 100 gig, now we have 400 gig transceivers. Everyone says like, oh my gosh, this is too hard. There are all these obstacles. But somehow, as a whole, as an entire technical community, we find a way to get there. It may not be the path that was originally intended, but somehow we as a community get there. So whether it's your third solution or the first or second or a combination of some of those, I'm pretty optimistic.
Yeah, me too. Let's keep some faith.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate your explaining all this to me and hearing about your background.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Pat. Yeah, I really enjoy talking with you. So thanks for having me.
That was the 7th and final part of my conversation with Hao Dong. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. We have a new website. It's optics.podcastpage.io. You can either listen there or use the same podcast platform you've been using all along. Please subscribe. Better yet, leave a review, especially if you've been using Apple Podcast. Remember, we're part of the Cisco Podcast Network, where you can find other great Cisco podcasts too. We also have educational videos on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and search on Cisco Optics. Thank you for listening. This is Pat Chou, Product Manager at Cisco Optics. That was the 7th and final part of my conversation with Hao Dong. Until next time.